Okay, so this is the first video I'm going to do on this channel. Um, and basically, like what I was envisaging from um, this whole channel in general is basically just a place where I can kind of document my thoughts, learnings from the business, um, ups, downs, whatever that may be, and really have a place of documentation that I can kind of reflect on in 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, 10 years from now. Um, and I can kind of track my growth as an entrepreneur, as well as how I'm thinking about concepts, how I'm actually able to communicate them, and so forth. So, one thing that we've been working on quite a bit is actually generating, faster execution. So, just going to blow my head up there, and this has sort of come about from. To give a bit of context, we had our main brand that was kind of generating the bulk of the revenue last year, as well as a seasonal brand, right? So we sold the main brand, um, and we're kind of working on the seasonal brand now. And the main issue there is that we have a seasonal product that sells 6 months out of the year. So summer in the US and summer in Australia. And then it kind of has 6 months of bedtime. So we're basically rapidly launching a lot of new products, kind of, dropship style in a way, which we haven't really done before. Um, and to push them through this brand with the aim of finding an evergreen front end product which will sustain the brand to then position it to sell. So kind of any business that you work on, uh, the lifeblood of any business is like profitably acquiring customers, it's distribution. So that's what we're trying to solve at the moment. And because of this, we're trying to basically get output as high as possible. We've really leaned the team down. So we've got like a touch in everything. And effectively, we've sort of gone through these things, which are, getting the team really focused on what actually matters, which is literally just finding that, front end profitable offer. And anything that doesn't help us do that is kind of a waste of time. Um, and really, what we're getting, each person in the team to do is first this deep work time. So basically, the first 4 hours of each day, um, everyone in the team is putting their main, deep work tasks. What this means is there's no Slack check-ins. Um, we've basically banned Slack before midday for whatever time zone you're in. Um, no Slack check-ins, no messaging. Basically just work on, the main tasks that are going to drive the business forward. And then what we do is we have this kind of midday check-in, which will come in. Midday check-in kind of serves two purposes, right? So the first purpose of this midday check-in is to actually add a level of accountability, right? Because we were facing times where we would have people put out their weekly priorities and put their daily priorities out, and we would find 2 weeks later tasks had just kept getting pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. So the midday check-in adds a level of accountability, whether you like it or not. Adding additional accountability in the form of another person or in the form of someone actually having to say, yes, I've either met the requirement or haven't met the requirement, um, will increase output. It's just how humans work, right? So that's kind of the first thing the midday check-in serves. The second part the midday check-in serves is really removing bottlenecks, right? So there may have been bottlenecks that are preventing people from, doing their most important task, and they're waiting on an answer from someone. Um, they're waiting on a bit of information. They're stuck somewhere. And what this midday check-in allows us to do, these bottlenecks, and if anyone's run a business, these bottlenecks can go on day after day, week after week, right? This midday check-in allows us to come in, remove any bottlenecks, prioritize speed, and then, ultimately increase the output, right? Um, The third part of actually getting, an increased level of output from, a small team is everyone posting priorities. So that includes uh, daily priorities, segmented by deep work time, and then shallow work time. People coming back to their daily priorities, and then figuring out, what's still left to be done. Or, what have I actually completed for the day, right? And this is really good again because it's like double accountability. Um, so they're coming in at the end of the day again, and we can go in and we've got a whole Slack channel where everyone's posting their priorities. We can come in at the end of the day and see who has actually completed what they've said they would and who hasn't, and notice any patterns. The other really important thing versus who has completed everything. The other important thing that this does is you get an insight into how your employees think. Now, early doors in the business, when you're scaling up, you're potentially just going to hire people that are executors but are really unable to kind of think. Right, the first like level of responsibility you take off your plate. You might be doing a task, you SOP it, you hire someone to do it, um, and you hopefully then let it get done. Now, is the issue with this is you are always going to be the one directing, right? Um, Ideally, the place you want to get to is a place where your employees are able to think and prioritize and figure out what needs to be done next on their own. And posting these daily priorities is really good because you can quickly grade employees on who is able to do this versus who's who's unable to. Now, I'm a big believer in you're able to teach any skill, but the person needs to be wanting to learn it, right? So this is a really good way to see like which employees have a huge gap that needs to be bridged. You know, bridge the gap between where they are now and where they need for the business to be successful. Or there are potentially some employees who you go, oh holy shit, like this person is really thinking about their role and able to prioritize and really understanding of where the business is at. Now, potentially, there's another sort of hidden root cause of this is that you haven't communicated what the priorities of the business are. Okay, so that's another thing that needs to be taken into consideration. The other thing is, which is what I'm trying to teach, like my team leads right now, is what's that? Sorry. So is now IRR is figuring out the IRR. IRR equals internal rate of return, I believe, right? Essentially, like for the input, what output are you getting? Some tasks in the business are going to have huge IRR, right? Getting a new product launch out, if you know 1 out of every 5 products ends up being, 7 or 8 figure a year brand, which profits X amount, and then you can get X amount at exit, you know that's like time and money well spent, right? Similarly, if updating a macro in customer service is going to have a very different IRR, right? So that's really important for you to teach this concept to your employees, and this kind of comes back into thinking and prioritizing. Is for every task in the business there needs to be like an IRR, and your employees need to be thinking about it, and it needs to come from the top as well. So this to me is like not really like a blueprint. It's just a few things of how you can actually generate faster execution within the team. And more learning for myself is like pushing the team to post their deep work tasks, checking in at midday. Have they actually completed these deep work tasks? If they haven't, what are the bottlenecks here? And we want to be prioritizing speed and output. Because at the end of the day, your job as a leader is just to remove bottlenecks for your team so they can execute. posting priorities. So again, this kind of forces people to one, plan out their day, making an expectation of the company, segmented by deep work time and shallow work time. Um, at the end of the day, they need to come back to daily priorities. So it's another level of accountability. It gives you an insight into how your employees think and prioritize, and it allows you to quickly scan over, people posting their daily priorities in Slack, who's actually getting them done, how long is it taking, what are people putting as their priorities. I had a situation just recently where, my media buyer had put 6 tasks in his daily priorities, and they were all outside of what his main core task is. So potentially that's a lack of communication on me. He hasn't, been communicated his core task. Um, but this is really important, and you can quickly gather this information. And then this one is super important. It's like you need to teach this concept of IRR to your employees, because every task they do has to drive an outcome, and there has to be a return. If there's no return, um, and if they're not thinking about the return that each task can give, then it needs to be removed, um, and that needs to be like drilled in constantly. So yeah, hopefully this helps. First video, should be random musings, reflections, learnings, econ breakdowns, whatever. Um, so hopefully you've enjoyed it.